Tonight on Canning with Leah, I'll be showing you my most highly requested recipe, which is canned venison. And thank you so much to my husband Ben for getting a buck this year so that we could go ahead and get some venison and be able to can some. I personally haven't had any luck yet this year, but maybe I'll still have some luck, but thankfully we have got some venison to be able to show you how to can. So first of all, I'll start off by stating that for canned venison, my preference is to can in pints. We've done quarts in the past, but I found that quarts tend to be too much meat to make at one time. So pints seem to be just the right amount to be able to make one supper, or and have some leftovers for the next day. So pints are the best, and also I like to use the wide mouth pints just because that makes it a little bit easier to pack the meat into. And so I've already started filling a few jars, and what I do is I cut the venison up and I pack it raw into the jars. So usually what I'll do is use some of the bigger chunks off of maybe some of the roasts that I don't use, or some of the other nicer, bigger chunks of meat, but of course not the back straps because you want to eat those separately. So I tend to cut the venison up into like 1-inch chunks and then just stuff them into the jars like so. And you want to make sure that when you stuff them into the jars, you pack them tightly, nice and tight. Because as they cook, it'll make a little bit more room in the jars. So make sure that as you're filling the venison into the jars, you're continuing to pack in, trying to force any excess air out of the jars. So now that I have all 8 pints full, it's time to go ahead and get them put into the pressure cooker with the added ingredients. I would like to mention though that when you're cutting up your venison, if you're pressed for time, you can actually go ahead and stuff the venison into the jars, put the lids and the rings on the jars and put them in the fridge overnight. That's what I did yesterday just because it was getting to be late at night and I knew that I wouldn't have enough time to process the venison in the pressure cooker. So what I did is I just brought them out of the fridge just a little while ago to get the jars to warm up closer to room temperature before I go ahead and process them in the pressure cooker. So I have all of the jars out right now, and what I add to the jars is a teaspoon of minced garlic, and you can of course do fresh minced garlic, otherwise I just purchased the minced garlic that's in a jar. And add that to each of the jars. And then I add a 1/2 teaspoon of canning salt. So I get the Morton canning and pickling salt. And then I also add 1 tablespoon of water. And now that I have all the ingredients in the jars, I'll go ahead and wipe the rims. And then I have my lids in water that I had in a bowl that I boiled the water in the microwave. And then you just put the lids on the jar after you wipe the rim, and then secure your ring and place in the pressure canner. And so I would like to mention too that in my pressure canner, I process it with 2 quarts of water in the pressure canner, and I get it going on high because you want to get it nice and hot. Now I have all 8 pints added to my pressure canner, so I'll go ahead and put the lid on. And I have it on high. And for canning venison, you'll want to just keep an eye, with any pressure canner, you'll keep an eye on the gauge. And for processing it, you'll process it at 10 pounds. And for pints, you'll process for 75 minutes. If you're deciding to do quarts, you would just double all of the ingredients that I just explained for the pints, and then you would process for 90 minutes. But I'm going to be processing for 75 minutes. So now I'll just wait for the pressure canner to get up to 10 pounds. And as it gets to 10 pounds, you do have to watch it, just because if it starts to go over 10 pounds, you have to back off on the heat, and vice versa. If it starts to get too low, you have to get the heat up. So you do have to kind of babysit it through the 75 or 90 minutes, however long you need to process. One thing that I'd like to mention regarding pressure canners is, especially if you're in the market for one right now, you can certainly go buy one that's brand new. But I personally like to get the more vintage ones, like from the 70s. This one would be a Presto pressure canner from the 70s. So if you're lucky enough to maybe find one at an estate sale, I would highly recommend it. Or maybe check with one of your family members, an elderly family member that might not be using theirs anymore. I am definitely partial to the older pressure canners. But of course, if you have to go buy a brand new one, that's just as good as well. So now that it's been 75 minutes, we'll go ahead and turn off the stove. And then it's just very important to make sure that you let all of the pressure release from the pressure canner before you go ahead and open. So you just have to be patient. So now that it's at 0 pounds of pressure, we'll go ahead and remove the rocker from the pressure cooker. And then I will carefully remove the top of the pressure cooker. And now they're all done. And with my little jar grabber, I'll go ahead and remove it. And there is a beautiful jar of canned venison. So for canned venison, I thought I just wanted to add a few different ways that we use it and how we eat it. So one of our favorite things is to cook it in a pan with some cream of mushroom soup, and then you can put that over either egg noodles, rice, or mashed potatoes. So that's delicious. Another thing that we've done too is cook it with taco seasoning and use it for the meat and tacos. Also, another thing that the kids really like is just cooking it in a pan with some barbecue sauce to be able to make some barbecues. And there's really a whole lot of other ways that you can eat it as well. It's delicious and it's a very quick weeknight meal. Thank you for watching, and make sure to like this video and subscribe to Canning with Leah. Thanks.